First Lady Julia Tyler started a tradition still in use today. She was only at the White House for a few short months, but she made an impact. Julia Tyler didn't just step into the role of First Lady. She marched in with music, dancing, and a makeover plan for the White House. At only 24 years old, she became one of the youngest First Ladies in U.S. history. Frances Folsom Cleveland was the youngest at 21. Although she spent only about 8 months in the White House, she still left a tradition that carries on today. The early life of Julia Tyler. Julia Gardner Tyler was born on May 4, 1820, on Gardiner's Island, New Jersey, into a wealthy and adventurous family. If you're wondering if there's a connection between her maiden name and where she was born, there is. Lyon Gardner, one of her ancestors, purchased the island from the Montauk tribe in 1639. Julia's mother, Juliana McLachlan Gardner, was one of the wealthiest women in the state. This wealth helped Julia attend the Madame N.D. Chagaray Institute for Young Ladies and receive an excellent education that included music, history, literature, and French language instruction. Julia loved parties and entertaining, so much so that by the age of 20, she was known as the Rose of Long Island. After her education, Julia Tyler returned to East Hampton and gained an interest in singing and playing the guitar. And then, in 1839, when she was just 19 years old, the young lady did something that shocked society. She secretly modeled for an advertisement for the dry goods store Bogart and McKinley's. This caused a scandal and prompted her parents to take her on a tour of Europe until the gossip calmed down. After returning, Julia had no problem attracting suitors, even one 30 years older who was the President of the United States, John Tyler. She and her family were invited to join the president on the new steam frigate Princeton. However, that fun adventure turned into tragedy when an explosion from a huge naval gun killed her father. Julia and John grew closer in her grief, and she eventually accepted his proposal of marriage. They were married on June 26, 1844, and Julia became the first woman to marry a president already in office. Julia becomes the First Lady. Julia Tyler knew that all eyes would be on her as the new First Lady. She once wrote to her mother, "I very well know every eye is upon me, my dear mother, and I will behave accordingly." One of her first projects was updating the White House. At the time, Congress didn't provide funding for renovations, so she used her family's money to make the changes she wanted. "I have commenced my auspicious reign and am in quiet possession of the presidential mansion," she said. "This winter, I intend to do something in the way of entertaining that shall be the admiration and talk of all Washington world." She washed dusty curtains, cleaned chandeliers, and bought elegant new furniture. Everything from the look of the rooms to the uniforms of the staff got a fancy upgrade. Visitors noticed the difference right away. Julia Tyler loved hosting balls and gatherings and admired the grace and style of former First Lady Dolly Madison. But even with her successful parties and renovations of the White House, she felt there was something still missing: dramatic music. The song "Hail to the Chief" already existed, and it had been used on occasion. But Julia decided it should play whenever the president appeared at official events so that everyone would know he had arrived. She asked the Marine Band to perform it, and the tradition stuck. Today, "Hail to the Chief" is still used to announce the president. Julia Tyler was the first First Lady to be photographed. Since photography was new in the 1840s, most people sat for hours to get painted portraits, but Julia pioneered her way into becoming famous in another way. When John Tyler's presidency ended, the couple moved to their home in Virginia called Sherwood Forest Plantation. Later came the Civil War, and life became tough. John Tyler died in 1862. Money was scarce, So Julia worked to convince Congress to give pensions to former First Ladies. After years of effort, Congress granted her one in 1880. Julia Tyler lived until 1889, leaving behind a legacy of music, dancing, and a much more glamorous White House. Takeaways. 1. Julia and John Tyler were married on June 26, 1844, and Julia became the first woman to marry a president already in office. 2. Julia Tyler was the First Lady to be photographed. While the song Hail to the Chief was in the repertoire of the armed services bands, Julia Tyler insisted it be played at every arrival of the president, a tradition that continues until this day.